Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to do Stargazer Lily, but I'm going to do a life-size one. I have done them before when I first started doing videos, but they were the miniature ones to put in spray with roses or something like that of the similar size on a cake. But if you want to do a specimen flower to put on a cake, you don't need as many flowers. So I'll take you down to my board. Right, so the cutters that I'm going to use are these here. These are the lily cutters, so you've got your small petal and your larger wide petal. And then what you need also are some stamens, which I've got these made here, so I'm going to show you how to do those. Now the difference between a Stargazer lily and other lilies is the colour range. Now Stargazer lilies are generally a pinky colour like this, with the little dots on, but the colour can vary from a pale to a deeper colour depending on which one it is. Like a lot of flowers, there are lots of different varieties of them. Now the other colours that you see, like the yellows and oranges and whites and things like that, they come under the title of Oriental lilies. So they cover a wide range of other colours across the spectrum there. So that's the difference. The only difference is these are all pinks of different shades. The other ones are all sorts of different colours. But making the lily is exactly the same, depending on what colours you choose. So all the steps that I'm going to go through now are the same for each of the lilies. So I'm going to start off with a 20 gauge wire. I've got one wire here. I cut 20 gauge wire into 3. So you want 1/3 of a wire, and I'm going to do white paste. Now bearing in mind when you're doing anything like this, when you're making it, to check it in the petal to make sure it doesn't go right the way up. You want to probably go up about no more than 3/4, preferably 1/3 of the way up your petal with your centre, because the petals are going to be open, otherwise it's going to look too big. So I'm going to start off with some paste. It's too much, so I'm going to start off with a lot less. I need to get this really thin. I've got one here that I've already made, so I'll just pop that down at the side there. Where's my yellow pad? Just bear with me a second. If I put that on there so you can see what that looks like. I know it's a bit different because I'm using this big whiteboard this time because I've had a tidy up since somebody complained and then deleted the message and didn't let me know who it was that had complained. So lesson to you, I can't answer if you don't leave a message, because by the time I got the email and then went on to check it, it had been deleted. So it's not very nice that when you're going to make a comment about somebody, at least have the decency to leave it there so they can reply. Right, so got my wire to go down the paste like that, and then start rolling it up your fingers. Now the reason I started lower down is because when you start rolling it, it's going to come both ways, so it's going to spread. So just keep on rolling it till you get it as thin as you want, and then you can decide how much of it you want to take off. Yeah, somebody complained about my desktop being untidy. As you can see, I've had a tidy up. I don't always have time to do it because everything I need to be right where it is, but no food is prepared for anybody that's going to be eating it or going on a cake on here. Right, so now I've got some loose there on the end, as you can see. So I'm going to take some of that off. I'm going to leave a bit of that at the top. So I'll just make sure I've got some of that there, yeah, because that's going to make the anther cap. Just roll that up a little bit more, so there's a little bit more extra on there. And then I'm going to take some off because that's too big, so I want that probably to be about that big. So if I measure that against that, that's round about right. So just get your nails in and just take that bottom piece off. That's not too bad. And I'm going to use that piece that I've taken off there. I'm going to roll that into a ball. And this is going to make the ovary, which is the bottom bit here. Then I'm going to get some glue. Screw that on a bit tight. Bring that up to the base of your centre there, and then I'm just going to roll that round. Just shape that round there like that, so it wants to be a bit of an oval at the bottom. It just wants to be like a little bit fatter than the column itself, like that. And then what you're going to do then is divide this piece here into 6. So if you start off on one side with your cutting wheel, put a line on, turn it over so that it's on that side there, go into there, and then go in between and put another 2 in, like that. And then you can adjust that again round the bottom there to make sure that that's all neat and tidy around the bottom there. And then what I'm going to do is get the top part, get to as near as the top of wire as you can, and then push down with the pace here. If you need a little bit more, just roll it up a little bit more, like that. Hang on, I'll just bring the camera up a bit further so you can see what I'm doing here. Roll it like that and then squash that down. So basically what you want is a slight protrusion across the top. I don't know whether you can see that. If I put it against there, it is slightly bigger at the top, so you're just going to push that down so it spreads out across the top. And then you want a pair of tweezers, get into the top like that, and then just divide this into 3. Like that. And then you can just push down a little bit on that. So I don't know whether you can see that or not on camera. You might see it when it's a large. I'm looking at it on a small screen, so I can't see. My screen is only about what? About 3 inches by 2. Right, so once you've done that, you can put that to one side to dry. So I've already got one dry here. Now the next step is to make the stamens. So I'm going to use a 32 gauge wire here for this, and I'm going to get 2 wires and I'm going to cut those into 3 as well, because you need them to, because it's a bigger lily, you need them to be longer. On the smaller ones you only need a 1/4 of a wire. So just get those so they're level. Try and find out where your centre is on your wire. Cut. Put those together. Flipping out, they're nearly spot on then. And cut again. If you haven't got any florist scissors like this, use a pair of pliers with the cutting edge. Where are mine? I should have some here somewhere. Here they are. They have a cutting edge here, so what you do is you'd open that up, put your wire in there and then cut it like that. Right, so the easiest way to do it is to start off by getting all your wires together. Rather than doing them all individually, which takes you longer, you can start them off this way, but I do need those tweezers in a bit, the pliers in a bit, so you'll see why. So I'm going to get about that length of wire there, and I'm going to bend that this way, like that. So you've got that basically like an L shape there, we'll call it. Then you're going to get it about 2/3 of the way along the wire and bend it back the other way, like that. So if we just take one of those off, and if I bring that up to the camera so you can see that, and then what I'm going to do then is I'm going to get the pliers and I'm going to pinch that together and try and get it as close as I can. Just play around with it with a little bit. till you get it just as you want it. Just trying to get on the bend there. That's it. Now it's not quite central, so you can pull that wire down a little bit so your T-bar is more in the centre. So if I lift that up again for you to see. And then what I do now, because it's a bigger one, you can shape these a little bit more by getting hold of both ends of your T-bar and just giving it a slight curve down. Now you could, at the next stage, put a small piece of paste on there, which is really fiddly to do. I find it a lot harder, but quite a few years ago when we were teaching, when I had my shop, the lady that was teaching flowers at the time, she'd seen somebody demonstrating this way, and I've done it with a lot of my stamens. Those that have watched my videos before will know that I make my own pollen, and when I'm doing things like lily stamens and that, I make those using this method. So I'm only going to do a couple of them there. I'm going to leave those until after, because you don't need to watch me do all that, because I've already done my blue beater bit. So the next stage now, I have a jar here somewhere. Where is it? Oh, there. This has got my CMC powder in it. This is what we make the glue with, and that's what we use for making the flower paste. If anybody's using my recipe to make their own paste, this is the vegan paste recipe that I've got on some of my videos. So if you look back through the videos, you'll find it on a couple of them. Maybe 2 or else maybe 3 that have got it on. And then what I'll do then is dip that into the glue and then into the CMC. Tap your excess off like that, and then you can put that to dry. Just move that out of the way, put that in there. So we'll do the other one. So do another one again, into the glue, into the tallow powder. Now what I did with these, because sometimes I find that when you've made your stamens, they don't look full enough, so it's a good idea to let that dry and then to come back and do that stage again. And then I've got some here that are dry, so I'll just pop that down there for a minute, and I need my pollen next. There's my top off that. Right, this is some pollen that I've made, and all this is, don't go and spend £2 or £3 on buying it ready made, because for under £1 you can go get some ground rice or semolina, a big bag of it, and you can make loads of different coloured pollens just by putting some in a little pot like that. Put whatever powder colour in that you want your pollen to be, give it a good shake, and you've got your pollen. So don't go in spending £10 when you don't have to. You can make it yourself and it'll last you forever. Can't remember how long I've been using this. Seems years, because it doesn't go off. So into your glue again, and then into your pollen, and that gives you your stamen. So if I just put that again against that yellow pad so you can see that. So then put those to one side to dry. So we'll just get rid of the glue for now. So we've made the centre, we've made the stamen, so the next thing is the petals. Now normally I only do one petal. I'm going to do a full set here because all these bits and pieces I can use and make that up into another flower. I don't always normally do that, but today I am going to do, because then I can put those to one side to dry. I'll just get myself a foam pad to put them on to dry. Just get rid of that. These get a bit mucked up with all the dust off of petals and things like that, but you can always put them in the washer when they get too dirty. But it happens in this trade. It's more the colours that you use in the powder colours, because it flies everywhere, so it can be a bit messy. But you don't know until you start wiping down, and then you find all this colour suddenly pops up that you didn't know was there. So be very careful when you're doing with powder colour. So I'll get my rolling pin and I'll start rolling this out. Now on this board here I haven't got a groove side on this, but for those of you that are using the groove boards, if you haven't got one of these rolling pins that I'm using here, just hope I've got enough paste here to roll all these petals. If I haven't, I won't do the whole set, but I'll just do what I can cut out. That's not sticking. I'm just going to put a bit more white fat on there. So once you get it on the board, this is the best method to use, not the powder method like a lot of people do, because you're going to dry your paste out using that method, and also as well it won't stay on the board. Once you get it on the board, you want it to stay on the board. It's not like pastry. We're not going to be, or sugar paste, picking it up and turning it round. Once you start rolling your flour paste on the board, you want it to stay on the board. I'm just going to move that a bit further towards me here to make it easy for me, otherwise I'm going to be putting my head under the camera. Now, as I said in the last video, just check in the middle, because you sometimes find your paste is a bit thicker in the middle, so just give that a bit of an extra roll. For some reason I always find that the paste is thinner at both ends and thicker in the middle, so if you come back and just think, best way to check, I know it sounds a bit silly, but just by rubbing your fingers over the top you can tell how thick or thin your paste is. You get used to it with experience, but that's the way to tell. Apart from the fact, because these are quite fleshy flowers, we're not doing these as thin as we would with rose petals or things like that, unwired petals where you can get them really fine. It doesn't matter when you're doing that sort of flower to get them really thin, but when you're making a flower where all the petals are separately wired, it needs to be thick enough so you can get a ridge in your paste. And don't forget, when you're using the groove side of your board, to take the paste off of the board and turn it over so you can see where your groove is when you start putting your wires in. Right, so I'm going to start putting my ridges up here with my trusty tool. This comes in handy when you get used to using them. When you've got a lot to do, if you're getting in mass production for whatever it is you're doing, it's a very useful tool, because then you don't have to keep rolling bits of paste out, because generally you can only, when you're using the groove board, you can only do a couple of petals at a time. Right, so I'm going to try to attempt to get 3 petals out of the length of this. 1, 2, not quite going to make it. I'm going to get 2 out, that's all. So then that one goes there. There's just enough room with this groove tool to get my petals out. I might get the 3 out for this one, because these aren't quite as long as the wider one. If I can get that out of that top bit, yes I can. Then I can get another wide one out of that side. Oh, we are being clever today, aren't we? I also mended these, you see. I managed to weld them together, because try not to squeeze your cutters when you're using metal cutters like this, because they're welded at the top here on the point on most of them, and if you put too much pressure on them they come apart. I've managed to get a cheap welding kit. These need a little bit more of a cut there. I haven't got quite enough pressure on. It's better. I'll just do these here as well. If you can get them into, you can feel when they go back into the groove if you're going to do this. Just be very careful and take your time. Another thing that you can do as well, I've probably mentioned it before, but for anybody that's watching for the first time, if you get a little coaster or something like that, because it can make your fingers very sore, and put that on top of your cutter to push down with so you don't hurt your fingers. As I say, it can make them very sore doing it because they're quite sharper, these metal cutters, but they are better than the plastic ones because they've got a sharper tip on them. There we are, you see that's cut out nicely. They come out nicely out of the paste. Just got a little bit of excess there on that, that's it. That one. And there. Right, we can get rid of that paste now. Don't need that. Put that away. Right, so now I want some 26 gauge wires. Again, I'm going to cut the wires into 3. Because of the size of the petals, with it being a life size one, you need a longer wire. So get 2 wires. So that'll give me my 6 petals. Where's my scissors? There they are. So just try and measure it as near as you can, a third. When you've been doing it as long as I have, you sort of get used to round about where they should be. There we are. And then get your petal between your finger and your thumb. And this is the same for all petals that's separately wired. Make sure that you've got a clean end on your wire, there's no curves on it or anything. And then twist that into the bottom of your petal, and then just take your time and get your petal, your wire to go up your petal in between. You can feel between your fingers if it's staying inside the paste. If it comes out, you'll feel it. And go probably, I've gone up to about there with that. The reason for that is if you break a petal, it's a lot easier to repair it if it's on the wire. So that's that one done. So I'll do a narrow one here. I'll just do one more, then what I'll do is I'll switch the camera off, do all these and finish them all, and then I can show you the next stage then. So you're not sat for a long time, because I know my videos are long. The last few have been quite short because they were simpler flowers, but some of them like these, when there's a lot of steps to go through, can get a bit tedious for people watching. Right, so I'm going to come back in a sec. Not going off. Right, I'm back now. I've got all my petals wired, so I'm just going to pop those over there. I'm not going to use my white pad to do these. I'm going to use this yellow one so that you can see what I'm doing. So get your ball tool. I'm using, this is a medium ball tool, I'm using the small end of the medium tool, and just run it round the side like that to take all the thickness off the edge of your petals. I find this a lot easier for a lot of, or I found it with my students, a lot easier to use a ball tool rather than using the dog bone tool. A lot of people had difficulty keeping it right on the edge because you want to be half on and half off, and there is a little bit more control with that. Right, so do that with each of your petals. So what they used to do was to start at one end and be going round like that, and then they drift in like that, and you end up with a ridge round there. If you do one side, like I'm doing here, and then do the other side, and just do a small section at a time. As long as you cover the whole lot, that's fine to take the edge off. And just do that with all of your petals. Now I was told in competition that they don't mind your petals being thick in the middle, because I got pulled up because I could see the light through, I had a light behind my display and they could see the wires, and I got marked down for that. And as I said, I don't like thick petals on my flowers. If the flowers got thin petals, I do thin petals. But the light was my enemy in that case. This one's a little bit thicker, is this? That's why it's slipping around a little bit there. Just take your time with it, just to get that thickness off. Some flowers, like lilies and like orchids and that, are quite fleshy flowers, so you can get away with your paste being thicker, because they are thicker in reality. Just 2 more to do. And last one. You can see how I'm right on the edge. Basically, think about drawing a line round the edge of your flower, and think about that being your point of your pen or pencil, and that's where it wants to be. So you're tracing it out like that. Right, so once you've done those, then you can go into your veiner. Now there's lots of different kinds of veiners on the market, so it's a matter of either which one you can afford or which one you find the best. But always make sure you've got the groove in the base there for the back, so the groove on your petal goes down onto that side. So that's going to be your back of your flower. Then put that on top, give it a good press like that, and then take that out of your veiner. Now the next stage is we're going to have a curve on the petal. So if you look at the petals that I've already made here, they curve back. So what I'm going to do here, if you get it between your finger and your first finger and your thumb, and just gradually go down it like that to bend that back like that. So you've got that curve on it, and then you want to bring the bottom part of the petal up like that, because they're going to go around the base of the pistil. So you need to make sure that that bit there is rounded, otherwise they won't fit. And then if you go onto the edge of your foam like that and pop it on the edge of your foam like that, so it keeps its shape. So I've put it on somewhere where that can hang over the edge. So I'll just go through that with each of the other petals. Bridge into the groove. Sounds like a record, doesn't it? From the 60s and 70s. Right, between your finger and your thumb, curve it back like that. Bring that up there and go down your petal. Pinching it at the end of your petal like that, just to give it a bit more shape, and then onto your foam like that. So I'm going to put them all round the edge of my foam there. So you get a bit of movement in your petal by doing that as well. Don't worry about them being flat, they're not flat in nature. So try and mimic nature as much as best you can. Now before I put this in, the last one in the veiner, I'm going to show you a different method, because I can just hear the voices now. Well, I haven't got a veiner and I can't afford to do it, and I don't really want to spend money on things like that unless I know that I'm going to be okay with it. Fine. So another important tool to have, and I've used this in a lot of my videos, is the silk veining tool. And bring that up to the camera there so you can see that it's got like, it gives you like a sort of shot silk effect. So I'm going to do it on one of these before I put it in the veiner, just to show you. So if you get it on the flat of your hand like that, get it in the centre, roll out like that in a fan motion, and then out to the other side like that, and then you'll get some veining into your petal. You probably can't see this under this light with it being white, but that's what you can do if you haven't got a verner. So don't despair if you haven't got all the right equipment. The cutter's the most important part, because then, I mean, if you're not doing them for a competition, it doesn't matter. If you're doing them for a competition, then yes, you have to have all the verners and everything to get everything botanically correct, because that's what they're looking for in competition. It's got to be as real as possible. If you're just doing it for cakes for people, especially if you're doing them in mass production, the more money you spend on equipment, the more money you need to be charging for your cakes. And especially now with the price of things being the way they are in the shops now, everything is expensive. I mean, people do grumble when they phone up about the price of cakes, you know, and as I keep telling all of my students, you've got to think about the amount of work that you put into it. You've got to charge for that, give yourself an hourly rate. You can't be doing things for nothing, otherwise it's not worthwhile. There's no such thing as a cheap cake. And I used to get back, well, I'm only learning, I'm not a professional and all that sort of thing. It doesn't make any difference. It's going to take you longer than it is for somebody like me to do the job. So you've got to think about that, you know, otherwise it's just not worth doing. Everybody is in business, if you're doing it for other people, to make a living out of it. You don't necessarily make loads of money and make loads of profit out of it. It's the time it takes you to do it. It's your time. So if you think about an hourly rate, I mean, the basic rate these days is, oh, well, I mean, we used to work on £10 an hour years ago. Really, it should be more like £20 an hour now, I suppose. Should be double, at least, probably more, for a skilled person. So the more you've been doing it, the more you can charge. There we are. So that's all the petals there shaped and onto the foam. So we can get those out of the way. So the next step now is to start colouring things. Now as you can see, I've already coloured and finished off some of my petals. So I'm only going to do one petal. I've left one to do. So I'm just going to get my kitchen roll over. So what I'm going to do, I'm covering as much of my board as I can here. Just get my equipment out of the way, put those on there. Rid of the cutters. So I'm going to cover all of that. And then I've got another piece of kitchen roll, because it's cheap enough to do it with this, rather than getting it all over the place. So this is the piece the powder's going to go on. The rest of it is to stop it from flying everywhere, hopefully. So I've got two brushes. I've got one for my, sorry, not that one, my red. Where's it gone? Lost my red brush. I thought I got myself organised here and put them all up the side. Oh, there. See ya. Now the colour that I'm going to use here is one called Garnet. When you're doing these sort of things, I find that the reddy colours like burgundy and reds, and what was the other red that I looked at? They're a bit too orangey. I find if you go more onto this side of it, the colours that I would pick out of the edible art colours really are either Garnet. Garnet is more of a sort of a maroony colour, or Blackberry is another one, which is a bit darker than this. They're the colours that I would normally use for this, because when you brush them onto white, they do come out more pinky coloured. And it depends on how deep you want your colour to be. I mean, I've done them paler than that, and I've done them deeper than that. It just depends on where you want to go with your Stargazers, because there are various different combinations. So that's the colour that I'm going to use. So here I've got my dried white petal, and I've got my brush. I've got a bit of the Garnet left on here on my kitchen roll. So start off by going up the centre of your petal like that. Just make sure you support it under your finger. Although these petals were made yesterday, they've still got a bit of flexibility in them. I mean, at this time of year, with it being beginning of November onwards, and especially over the last few days we've been having all these gales and storms and what have you, there's a lot of moisture in the air, so they do take longer to dry. And then just start brushing out from the centre like that, and basically you want to fade it out, a bit like you ladies that are watching putting your eyeshadow on if you wear makeup. I did notice when I was married, when my wife was wearing makeup, or any of the well, normally any of the others I went out with, you don't normally see them putting the makeup on, do you? You don't see them without. When you live with them, you've got no choice. Right, so that's that. So that just looks boring on its own. So the next step is, now I've got some of the powder in the lid. I always use the lid as a palette, because then when you finish with it, let it dry out, and then you can use it again. You just add some more isopropyl to it, or whatever it is you're using for putting it on. Now isopropyl is an alcohol, but it's not the sort of alcohol you drink, so anybody for religious reasons that can't use alcohol can use the isopropyl. It's basically similar to the one that they use in hospitals when they clean down for injections and cleaning wounds and things like that sort of thing. It's not that kind of an alcohol that you would drink. So what I'm using here is, I'm using the pointed end of a skewer. So if you rest it on your fingers, so you've got some support there, then start spotting around. Now you go outside of the pink into the white with the dots, and just take a bit of time doing this. Not something that can be done quickly. Some will be light and some will be a bit heavier. That's fine. That's how they are on the real flower. Get my fingers up a bit further, so I've got a bit more support there further up towards the end. You don't want to go and break your petals after you've got to this point. It's always a good idea to make spares just in case. There we are. So that's that done. So now the next stage to do then is, I'm going to use this colour here. This is called Tropical Lime that I'm using from Edible Art. This one here. There is one called Lime as well, which is a little bit darker. Either of them will be fine. I don't go quite as dark with the green as they are on the real flowers, because sometimes if you're too heavy with the green it can look too much on sugar flowers, so just be careful. That's why I go for a lighter one. So I'm going to dust a little bit on the tip of the petal there, on the base of the petal there, turn it over, tip of the petal there, base of the petal there, and then with your brush sideways, so you're using the narrow part of the bristles, just go and waft down the back of the petal with the green to have a line going down the spine of the petal. Okay? So once that's done, that can go to one side with my other petals. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to do the column. This is the one that's already dry, so I'm just going to have to get a bit more green because I haven't left enough on there. Again, this in the real flower it's a bit darker green, but as I say, I find if you do it too dark it can look a bit too much. I mean, it's your flower. If you want to do it darker, then just don't be too heavy with the dust, because you're doing it on white anyway, so you can get away with doing a light dusting. So all the way up the column, right to the top, all over like that. And then we want to go back to your red one, and then on the top part there just give it a waft over the top. So now you've got more definition now in that top part, because the red now picks out that bit at the top. Okay, so put that to one side, get rid of that brush, and I want my green brush again back now. So this time I'm going to do the stamens. So I'm just going to get all my stamens and lay them out. I find it a lot easier rather than doing each individual one. If you get them all laid side by side on your paper. So I'm just going to get those leveled down so they're all sort of more or less at the same level. There we are, like that. Get some more of the green dust onto there. Hold your wires down and then just go down your wires with the green. If you've got a lot of stamens to do, if you're doing more than one flower, you will probably have enough green on your kitchen roll to do the other side. I might have to turn these over and do these, because these are the only ones that I've done. I'm not going all the way down, you only need to go far enough down, so that's going to come down to where the pistil is. So I'm just going to turn those over and look at the other side. Yeah, it does need a waft down there. Turn that over. But like I say, if you were doing a lot of them, you wouldn't necessarily have to turn them over, because if you've already got it on your kitchen roll, it will come off onto the... You can always touch them up if there's a little bit that's missed. You just don't want them to be white. You want them to have a bit of colour. But like I say, I don't like using too heavy a colour, because it stands out too much. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put this together, and then I'm going to go on to the leaves. So we'll get onto that first. So I need to get some green tape out of my cupboard. And it happens to be at the bottom of the pile. Yep, that's the right one. See, I've been really good at putting things away. That is a miracle for me. Right, so... Oops, that's come off. That's a bit short. Now, I'm not going to use full width tape, because that make the stems too thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that in half. So here's my little trusty machine. If you get hold of one of these for cutting your tapes, get one of these. They're absolutely brilliant. Save so much trouble cutting your tape. They do come with 3 razor blades in them, but I always take 2 out and just have one with 1 blade in, and then have one with 3 blades in. Then you can do your half width tape and your quarter width tape, and just pull it through like that, and you've got your half width tape. Easy as that. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start off by starting the tape off around the bottom of my pistil. So if you just nip that in, no, that's not the sticky side, hang on a minute, stretch your tape and find out that's the sticky side. We'll just do the opposite side to where I started. Nip it in with your thumb, and then start that off on your wire underneath your pistil layer. Then start putting your stamens in. You can put them in the grooves that you've made in there. It wants to be a little bit lower. So if you see where I've got that on there, if you can see that, and these are basically, they're like umbrella spokes. And the advantage of having those grooves around there that you put in with the cutting wheel is that it more or less puts your stamens in the position that you want them to be in. You could, if you wanted to, just your wires once you put them in here. That might be easier for you as well. Just depends on what you find is easy. When you come to do things like this, you find the way that you feel most comfortable with. It's my job to show you how to do it, but then there are different ways of doing it. Everybody has their own way, and you find out which is the best way of doing it for you. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. Then last one going in. Like that. And then once you've done that, then you can tape down. I always tape down in between. For the amount of paste tape you're going to use, it's always worth doing that, because then you find whatever you're going to put in next will stay in position a lot easier. So what you can do at this point is, once you've got your, I've got it the wrong way around again, get your tape started off under there, that's it. Then you can adjust your stamens to pull them out like that. So that's your centre done. And then we can start off with the petals. So if I get all my petals out, so those are the wide ones and those are the narrow ones. Now with a lot of flowers like this, you generally find, certainly on lilies, the wide ones are the ones you put in first. So they're your inner layer. The outer layer is the narrow ones that form the bud. So start off by bending your wire back like that and tape your petals in. Lift that up a bit. You can adjust them once you've got them all in. So basically you're aiming to get your wide petals with one of the wires in between. So every alternate stamen rather is where your wide petal goes. Bend that out, get that in, and you can see round the, I'll show you the back when I've taped this in. Now what you need to do now is to pull your wires down to make sure those are tight in. It'll stop your petals from wobbling about. This is one of the faults my students had when they were doing these flowers. The moving about is because they haven't tightened the petals in. So make sure you go around tight and then tape down again. Now one of the things that I haven't done is a longiflorum lily, so that's one of the ones that's on my list of things to do. So I might do that next. So that's slightly different to this. So once you've got those three petals in like that, so you've got your sort of Isle of Man shape, then you can put your narrow ones in. They go in between. Now you can see at the back how those petals, because I've rounded them round, how they fit in round the middle layer. So that's why it's important to curve that bottom part of your petal in. So we now put the narrow ones in. So it's the same with these. In between your two wider petals, like that. Next one in. I'm just going to pull that down because that feels a bit loose. And that one. That's it. And then the other narrow one goes in there. And then tape down. Just try that, make sure that's tight in. Just try all your petals again just to make sure they're nice and tight. And tape down. Right, so that's the flower put together, so you can now play about with your petals to get them just as you want them. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that in this block here that I've got with the holes in, and I'm going to come back in a couple of minutes and I'm going to concentrate now on the leaves. If you want to put some leaves with them, if you're just doing one stem of flowers, you might want to put some leaves in. So I've already made some up, so I'm just going to go see if they're dry and then I can go on to those. Right, so I've got my leaves up. I've dusted some of the leaves and just left one of them to dust, but I'm going to show you how I made the leaf. These I've done freehand. I have got some cutters somewhere, but I didn't want to do the leaves too big, so when you're cutting them out individually you've got a little bit more control over the size that you want, so you can try and keep them in pairs if you can, the same size. So the leaves aren't that much different going up the leaf because they sort of go up in pairs alternate on the lily. So where always me, there it is. I'm just going to roll a small piece of paste out to do this. Now I'm not using any veiners for this either. I'm going to use some corn husk to vein it. I have got veiners somewhere, but I couldn't find those either. So like everything else, when you lose something, you can guarantee that it'll be right under your nose when you find it, but it's never there when you want it. Right, so I've got my groove down there, so I'm going to get my cutting wheel out. Just drop something in my bin there. Right, so all it is just a simple shape. So start with at your bottom, bring it round and up to a point, and that's as big as I'm going to go with these. Doesn't matter if they're a bit lopsided because leaves are never perfect. And the advantage of using a cutting wheel, because it's plastic, it doesn't damage your board, and also as well it's a lot easier to go around curves with it. Don't try and use a scalpel or anything on your board because you'll ruin it. If you do have to use something like a scalpel, be very careful because it can pull your paste, and do it on a separate mat. Get yourself a separate cheap piece of board or something that you can do that on. Don't do it on your board that you're going to roll out on. So what I want here is some 28 gauge wires. I've got some here. No, they're not 28s, they're yes they are. I'm forgetting what I've cut up. The others were white ones, weren't they? The thinner ones that I used. Don't mind me talking to myself, I do this all the time. There's only my cat to worry about it, and he's not bothered. So again, between your finger and your thumb, and just gradually, a bit at a time, feel the wire go up through your paste, like that. Okay? Then onto the other one. You could do your leaves a little bit narrower than this as well if you wanted to, but I'm doing this as a sort of a specimen. Normally I wouldn't do leaves to go with the lily, but because we're doing this as a specimen flower that you could put on a cake, then that one's torn a little bit at the bottom. If that happens, this is cheating, but don't do this if you're doing a competition. That happens, rather than rolling it out and doing it again. Tiny bit of paste, roll it into a very fine sausage, and with this paste, because it's quite sticky, it will blend in quite easily. Down your wire like that, and then just press that in like that and smooth that over your wire. There we are. Got a little bit extra there at the bottom, we'll just take that off. That's it. Right. Sorry, my camera went off there. Corn husk, leaf on, corn husk on top. Give it a good press. And then, sorry about that, the battery ran down on my camera, so I had to plug it in. I couldn't find the plug. So once you've got you've done your veining on your leaves. So again, if you just put it in between two pieces of dried corn husk like that, give that a good press, and then shape your leaves. So from the back, pinch all the way up the leaves like that, and do the same on the other. And then that wants to go onto your foam like that. You can always shape them a bit round if you want. Like some of these, they've all gone plenty of shape with them because they've been drying on some of this foam. And then when your leaves are dry, for some reason my light's flashing here, and I don't know whether you can see that or not, but it's annoying me. So I get my paper over. I've already dusted some while when I came back, so that I got them already dusted for you. So the colour that I'm using for this is Rainforest, but I'm not dusting it too heavy. I'm just giving it a light dusting over. Now I can find my green brush. What have I done with it? See here somewhere. I dropped something on the floor. Was it my brush? Some tape. Where did that go? No, wasn't. It's there. Here we are. Right. So I've got one here that's dried. It's not totally dried because I only made these this afternoon, but I put them downstairs where it was nice and warm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it on one side and dust down like that. I'm just going to give it a waft. I'm not going too heavy with it because they're not overly dark, but because I'm giving it a light dusting like that, it's not a flat colour all over. There's a bit of variation in it. It just makes them look, although they are quite flat colour, then give it a waft over the back, a lighter waft to the back of your leaves. The reason I've done that is because then your leaves don't look boring. Sometimes we have to give nature a helping hand when we're making sugar flowers or cold porcelain flowers or whatever it is, whatever medium you're using, to get that variation in colour. So that's what I've done with those. I'll just get those out of the way, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tape those onto the, get rid of all of that, and where's my tape there? Let's see if we've got a nice long piece. Yes, we have. So I'm just going to stretch that again to start it off. That's the sticky side, so we turn that over. Again, I'm going to get my flower, start that off underneath. I'm starting a little bit lower down than the flower this time because I don't need it that high up. Just get rid of that stamen that I did earlier. And then what we're going to do then is, if you get all your leaves laid out and have a look at the size of them and try and get them in pairs that are more or less the same size. Those two are the same size. Those two are about the same. I don't know how many I'm going to get on here, Those two are about the same. So I'm going to start off with those. So bend your wire down like that. Bend it over your thumb, keep it underneath, and put your leaves in. Now, as I say, normally with lilies, if I'm doing them in a spray, I wouldn't be doing this, but if you wanted to do the leaves with your lily, this is how they go. So you get two leaves facing each other like that. Tape down a little bit further. Make sure you pull them in, make sure that they're nice and tight. And then we're going to go in with a leaf lower down but in between those two, like that. And one on the other side. They've moved round of them, but you can sort that out once you get them in. You can adjust them where you want them to be. Tape down a bit further. So we can now adjust those, so that one comes round there, that goes round there. So you've got 4 in like that, and then I'm just going to put another 2 in. These are a little bit bigger. They do get a bit bigger as they go down, but not a great deal bigger. There's not a lot of difference in the size of the leaves on a lily. And because I haven't got that much of a stem on it here, I'm not going to go any further with those, so I'm just going to tape down with those. Pull those down, make sure those are nice and tight in, and tape down to the bottom. So then you can adjust your leaves to go around like that. So there we have the Stargazer Lily with the leaves behind it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm just going to bend that wire up, that bit of thin bit at the bottom there, so I can put it in here. Just move that out of the way. There we are. So I hope you've enjoyed my video. Don't forget to leave any comments you've got below or anything that you'd like to see. Also, if you're not subscribing to the channel, subscribe to the channel because it's free, and then you get to know what videos I'm uploading. I've got loads and loads of videos on there of all sorts of different things that you can watch at your leisure. And if you've got any questions about anything, leave those in the comments below as well. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So take care, stay safe, see you soon.